Happy Thursday, everyone, and welcome to our show. I keep calling it a show. I'm going to keep doing it. I like it. So we've got this is Voices of Resilience, and my name is Nathan Hofer. I'm the director of campus operations for the Lost&Found Association, which is obviously where I work. But we're the ones who are putting this little series on, and it's been a really awesome experience so far, and we're going to keep continuing it. And if you've never heard of Lost&Found, and you're just here because someone told you to check out this video, or you're friends with a friend who's watching it and you're just looking over their shoulder. Lost&Found, we focus on building resilience, and as part of creating an aspect of preventative mental health for young adults. So we're looking at ages 14 to 35, but primarily at this point in time, we are located at colleges and universities and other furthering education institutions. So we know that that's a big time of transition for individuals, and they go through a lot of different changes. So what we focus in on, like I said, is resiliency and building skills and support networks on the front side. So when mental health crises come along, people are better prepared to handle those things. They have more tools in their proverbial toolbox to deal with those, and we can get to a world where we don't talk about suicide or self-harm because they aren't issues. We can get to that point. So that's our goal. That's what we're about. If you're interested in finding out more, we'll put up a link to our social media handles here in a little while, but you can reach out to us at any point. And moving on past that to today, our guest is a good friend of mine, Corey Ross. He is the Vice President for Student Affairs, I don't know titles, at Spring Arbor University. And he still talks to me after being my former boss for 5 years. So that's a great thing. We worked together when I was at the University of Sioux Falls, and Corey comes to us with 20 plus years of experience, Corey.
21. Yeah, 21.
20 and 1 year. So
that
Corey, I'll
1
let
year
you
matters.
It does. I'll let you introduce yourself a little bit more, but I'm just really excited to have you here. Like I've said on other shows, I get it. It's like an excuse for me to hang out with people I really like and get to learn new things.
Well, I'm thrilled to be here. I love you, Nathan, and Lost&Found and what the organization does and what it's about. So I am thrilled to be a part of that and to be with you today. As Nathan mentioned, I've been 21 years in student development. I started as a resident director and director of student activities, and transitioned a couple different times up into the chief student affairs officer down in East Texas, starting in 2009, I think, and then 5 years in Sioux Falls. And now I'm just finished my first year here in Michigan.
That's awesome. And Corey, before we dive in too far, I wanted to know if you recognize this little guy.
Oh, delightful.
Corey gave us some Star
That
Wars
wasn't was that the one that had the spinner in the bottom too, or is that
No,
different
that one broke. I used it too much.
Well, good. That's good.
Yes. But like I said, I'm really excited to have you on here, Corey, for a number of reasons. Obviously, we love you and your family, and you've been a great support of not just myself, but Lost&Found, and I've seen you just love and support on students over the last 5 years, and just truly giving of yourself to make sure that they learn, grow, develop, and become better people. And I'm excited, and I think that shows with when we were just chatting the other day. My wife, whenever I'm talking to someone, she just walks by and she tries to get out of frame, but she saw you and she's like, "Hey," That's always a good sign. She's my barometer.
Oh, well, she's great, especially for a lot of reasons. In addition to choosing you.
Actually, someone I was texting with a former colleague, Esther, and she said, that my wife was really nice, but she made but you got to question her choice in husband. But what do you do? And
right.
I said, no, wrong. Anyways, like I said, I'm gonna focus up. So one of many reasons we wanted to have you on here is we're nearing the start of the semester for all of the students that we serve, but also across the country. And we are in a very, I hate saying new and unprecedented time every other week, but it's like I say it all the time. But we don't know. I mean, COVID has really changed the landscape of things. And this is going to be the first time that we're entering that space prepared with a plan. And so
Right.
as we're looking at the month of August, we're focusing on not just wellness and well-being, but getting prepared. And since students are a big,
Mm.
are higher students in higher ed are a huge population of who we work with, we wanted to make sure we're finding ways to support them and give them some tools for preparation for this next stage. And anyone else who's
Right.
listening, a lot of this stuff is probably going to be relevant to you because if you're working at you have a shop or a business, or you're working in the city, most likely there's some institution of higher ed nearby that has employees or people that you're a
Mm.
pipeline for people that you want to hire in the future, or just income, revenue, things like that. So I think all of this is relevant, but we are very focused on our students at this point.
One one thing that's important for me to make sure and can weave into this conversation is it's not just about my professional life. Even in my personal life, we while we were in Sioux Falls, have brought 3 kiddos into our home through the
Sure
foster
did.
system and are working on adoption. But trauma is a significant part of their past, and my wife and I have, in many ways, they tried to prepare us for what that would look like. We feel maybe some days more and more woefully unprepared. But this is a personal life thing too for us. Having 3 kids at home during the COVID era, trying to homeschool, trying to motivate when school is difficult, motivation for them anyway, to be without their friends. And so even one of our oldest is currently in a, a treatment facility for her own bouts of depression and suicide ideation and attempts. And so this hits really home for us personally too, as an entire family, and trying to, weave in together what I might learn professionally with my own family life, and how to weave what's happening in my family life into what's happening at work, has been a really interesting opportunity and challenge for us too. So I'm excited to kind of think through any responses to questions today based on 2 factors, right? My work life and my home life.
Yeah. And anyone watching, please feel free to toss questions in the comments if you have any. And if you're watching this later and you have questions, feel free to shoot them our way. You can message us at I'll toss up the banner here because this is where we live on social media, Instagram and Facebook. But if you have questions, and if you're, like I said, if you're a student who just wants to get some more input on this, or just anyone who wants to talk about this stuff, shoot us a message, and we can always get stuff to Corey at a later date too. So even if you miss the live stream right now, we have opportunities for you to connect going forward. So yeah, and I will say, Corey, I said this the other day, but that I think that speaks really highly to your heart and your level of care, because you didn't, when you jumped into foster care, you didn't just like start with like 1 or 2. You like dove in headfirst and with 3 kids.
Right.
Like you just no waiting, like full on level of care and
Right.
tackling the hard stuff right away. So I know you've had to be doing that in your professional life too, because we talked a little bit when COVID hit, because I was thinking about you and wondering how you were handling it. So
Yeah.
do you want to maybe take a second to share a little bit about that experience when everything kind of came to
Yeah.
a head back in, gosh, March seems like 10 years away. Like it's
I
so.
know. On a side note, a funny thing about that is I just filled up my gas tank for the first time since March 16th, on August 2nd. So we have 2 cars. So there was some movement with the minivan, with the kiddos. But honest, I had just life shut down, and I didn't even drive very much for the last 3 or 4 months. And trying to, part of it was where we are in Michigan. It's pretty restrictive for several months there. And part of it is just trying to be a good husband and father and model of what it means to listen and obey those that in authority over us, and stay at home and be safe. So, but yeah, starting back in really February, these conversations of what if and what might happen and where is this heading, and what might we need to do. It became evident really early on that there was division, and even among our own leadership and our own personnel and our team, as to where this is going and what might need to happen. And so it was really important for us to just get accurate information, you know, and that was so difficult early on, and it kept changing, so much. And so we just knew from the start that we needed to get good info, but we needed to be adaptable. And how that lived out was early in our meeting times, I would gather kind of a group. So because I was the one asking the questions, I got to be the one that led the committee, right? That's kind of sometimes how it works. And so they said, yeah, that's really important. It's great. Why don't you do that? And so kind of maybe there were 10 of us from around campus in different areas, and started processing through how would we keep our campus safe, and not really on the radar yet of leaving campus. But once that became pretty clear that that's what other schools were doing, and that became the standard of care. I mean, in some ways, it forces your hand when everybody else around you is kind of taking an action. Then it looks like if you do anything other than that, that there's risk that you're not caring enough, and you're not supportive enough, you're not interested in the student's health, because that became the standard of care. We learned that was a wise response, but there was 3 or 4 days in a row that were, all day, if not 10 or 12 hours around the table, debating the issues and walking through. And we would come up with a plan one day, and then the governor would come on TV that evening. We'd get home, turn on the news, and a new executive order came out that completely undid everything that we had just decided that day. And so we'd get back together and just try it again and walk through all the issues. And so really, truly, the idea of adaptability became really important, that this is a fluid situation. The information is changing daily. The sentiment of parents and students is changing daily. And how do you make sense of all that? For us, we're a Christian college, and so there's a lot of prayer involved on the front end of just seeking wisdom and getting clarity from all sorts of sources and making decisions. And so for us, it was about having plan B, C, D, and adjusting as we needed. So our primary focus was always on keeping our students safe and our faculty and staff safe. And our heart was toward especially those who were most vulnerable. And in fact, some of the issues that were raised were that students aren't very vulnerable. Most students, 98% of them, would probably be fine. But we had our faculty and staff that are a little bit older, that we were concerned a great deal about. And we also, where Spring Arbor is located in Michigan, there is a very prominent nursing home, extended care community that Spring Arbor is part of. So right where our college is, all around us are nursing homes and folks that were extremely vulnerable. And so what was our role in our community, not just for our community, campus community, but for the broader community, in helping keep them safe, and then obviously trying to figure out how to manage those students who were maybe not physically vulnerable, but became vulnerable if we were working remotely and online and taking classes online. Who would we need to care for well in that environment, and what students would likely struggle with that, and how could we help them? So lots of things to juggle in the air at the same time.
That sounds like, I know from my experiences just in general that it was that working with students in that kind of environment, that can be difficult. One second. Do you want to come sit here with me while you wait for mom? Oh, sorry, we have a visitor. You want to say hi to Corey?
Long time no see.
Yeah, because Daddy has it.
Oh,
it's okay. Hey,
she can't hear.
That's okay. Well, how about you go find mom? You said hi.
Hey, Letty.
I said this is live. This is the world.
That's right. Working from home. That's what we do.
It's working from home. So, with that, like how you having to adapt and switch things all the time, how did that affect you and your team, but also the students? Because I'm guessing if it's anything like the experience I know students had here, they were like, hey, we're gonna, we'll take a week off for add an extra week for spring break, and then we'll see you back soon, or and then all of a sudden they just
Right.
didn't get to come back. So how did that affect your team as well as your students?
Yeah, we had a very similar situation. Our thoughts at first and what we communicated to everybody was that this was a temporary situation for 3 or 4 weeks, and we would reevaluate in April. And we had already had our spring break. It was very early this year, first week of March maybe, and so that wasn't on the table for us. We were hesitant to send home for that reason, and so it was. We had to beg for grace and patience with our students because we knew that there would be conflicting information coming out or that we would be changing course. And so we'd always try to say, this is where we are right now. Things might change, and try to prepare folks for the fact that information might be different down the line. And so they were getting, at first it was 3 weeks. Then it was, well, actually, if you don't need to come back, don't come back. And so we had students with, half of our students had their belongings in their room still up until executive orders were lifted and travel was allowed back in the state in mid-May. So the students were not graduating like they were supposed to, but their jobs that they had lined up were starting, and they didn't even have their whole wardrobes with them. And so they're like, I can't afford to go buy new clothes. Can I please come back and get my clothes from the room? And at that point, we didn't have options. The governor had said travel wasn't allowed, and so we were trying to package things up and send it home to students and that kind of thing until they were able to come to campus. So, and it was incredibly tough on our staff, who just try so hard to be present and engaged with our students and supportive. And they knew that conflicting information is a struggle. And so their heart was going out to our students and their experience of this. Not being able to have a graduation, not being able to have, Spring Arbor, like many small colleges like us, have a lot of traditions, and none of the traditions occurred. Any of the activities that were, big events for us got to happen, and then cutting of the ivy and graduation didn't get to happen, and those kept getting pushed back. And so it was a difficult time, but our students in the midst of it were incredibly gracious and patient and kind in their communication with us. So I think that everybody understood the gravity of what was going on, and that this wasn't something we could control, but it was something we were trying to manage, and we're very patient in the midst of that.
Yeah, I can't even. I mean, I was just thinking about that when you're dealing with like a relational piece, and interacting, especially within the halls. Um, how I was thinking through that when everything was
Yeah.
happening across the street from our house at USF. Like, how are you managing getting people out, like getting their stuff, getting their things, like how do you
Yeah.
and remaining socially distant? Like that had to be incredibly difficult and stressful for your team.
Yeah. They were incredibly helpful in that process, um, and were very kind. I think the biggest thing for them was they knew that the relational piece of what that would mean. I mean, this is a tough time. So at a time when you can't be around people is the time that everything new is happening, and when you would normally need to be around other people for support. And so you're experiencing like, how can we reach out and help our students who would need people more than they ever did, but couldn't be around us to help. So we did a lot of emails and texts and phone calls, and in fact our staff phoned every single student, um,
Wow.
between yeah in so this happened early March. So April, the month of April, was just reaching out to every single commuter and residential student to find out ways that we could help, what needs existed, were there financial issues that they were experiencing because of work or their parents. We had donors that created a fund that equals about $220,000 that we could give to our students in need during this. So it was incredibly generous. And then it gave us an opportunity to meet real tangible needs as well as kind of the emotional needs.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's really cool to
Mm-hmm.
see a community giving back and connecting.
Yeah.
So within that state, um, I mean, I'm sure because, as you mentioned already, you had to shift plans like five, six,
Right.
27 times. because
Right.
things kept. I mean, because things were fluid, things were shifting
Hmm.
so rapidly. Um, I really thought we'd be. I don't mean to sound ignorant, but I really thought we'd be by August here. We'd be over this thing. It'd
Oh,
be not a big
absolutely.
deal anymore, and it would be
Right.
something we would consider and take part of, but it wouldn't be. We would have seen this thing kind of shut itself down, and obviously that is
Yeah.
not the case. So
No.
as you think about that, I like I said, I know that had to have just have been incredibly difficult for your team because how big is Spring Arbor? A couple thousand students,
Yeah, well, we have a total of 3,300 students.
and
About
called
half of
all of them.
those, yeah, two-thirds of them are online students in nursing programs or in counseling programs across the state. About 1,500 of those are here in Spring Arbor and around the area.
That's crazy. That's crazy. To think that you
Yeah.
called all of them too, because just a unrelated aside, when I was working with downtown
Yeah.
Sioux Falls in the in between here, I had for one of my
Hmm.
things was like calling all these people, and there was only like 100 some, maybe 100 to 200 people, and I was
Oh, it's
exhausted.
tedious.
And
Yeah.
3,000, woof. That's neither here nor
Yeah.
there. But anyways, as you're looking ahead here,
Yeah.
I speak to the craziness you dealt with because I think your staff and students especially had to develop their own semblance of resilience. But I feel like maybe this is unwarranted, but as students especially are looking at coming back, I feel like if I was in their shoes, I would have a fear about, we got stuck in the dark before everything was shifting and transitioning, and we just, we never knew what was going to happen, and we, those students who are coming back who didn't graduate probably felt this feeling of loss. Um,
Right.
and so, what are you doing to prepare for this fall semester, and how are you
Yeah.
communicating that out to students?
Yeah. I think I just in agreement with that. The what we're hearing from students through the summer and for the fall as we've started to plan, we've had a lot of parent and new student Zoom meetings so we can answer questions, and we've done that with our returning students to just try to be present and answer anything that we can anything that we can about how this semester will be different. But a majority of students are less concerned about their health. And I'm not saying they're not concerned about that, but I mean the issues that they're raising are not, am I going to be safe on campus this fall? It's what are we going to do if we have to go back home, and that's driving a lot of their decisions about whether or not to return this fall. So less about am I going to be safe on campus, and much more about, well, what's it going to look like if in October, November, there's an executive order that sends us all back home. And that we can answer for a lot of students is we are a lot more prepared this time. I mean, we're in good shape in a couple ways. One is we do online virtual Zoom classes all the time in certain areas, and we were trying to translate that quickly in March and April and May. But it was different. It was difficult, and the students had. We didn't have a lot of clarity on that front end of every class must continue to meet synchronously. You're gonna if you met Monday, Wednesday, Fridays at 10, you're gonna still meet Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10. That didn't happen, and the faculty had a lot of freedom to either go synchronous, asynchronous, and record things and just let students watch it whenever, um, or do everything online and just check in every once in a while and ask questions of the professor if you needed it. So the experience was so broad that everybody's experience of it was different. And so this time around, we have a lot more clarity that every class that we're doing right now on ground is is happening on ground, face to face, and being streamed live through Zoom and being recorded. So if there's a student who needs to be out because they're quarantined because they were exposed or they become infected with COVID-19, but aren't symptomatic or don't feel like they can't participate, they know that they can participate synchronously during their class time. They can do it from home or they can do it from a quarantine space on campus. And so those are that's a relief to a lot of our students that I know a little bit more now what online would look like, and it will still be a lecture still happening when it's supposed to, and that's assuaging a lot of fears and frustration. So that was one important piece about our planning this fall. I don't know if there are other areas that I can expound on, but I'll let you ask another question.
Yeah, I uh, I'm sure I have lots of questions. That's never been a problem for me.
Yeah.
Um, with that in mind, I mean, you obviously have a structure and you're able to communicate that to students. Um, are you still having some of those like in person experiences, like events or activities? Are people still living in the halls? I mean, what are some things that are being done
Yeah.
to handle those things? Because those, I mean, as you know, I'm pretty passionate about that part of the student
Yeah, for
experience. Is
sure.
that I think that's a really integral part, is that community, that those engaging pieces. And so
Right.
I want to know what your thoughts are on that, what you're doing specifically, and what your thoughts are um, about how you still maintain that. Because from a mental health standpoint, community is important. Having support, a peer
Right.
support network, that's super important.
Well, and that's a hallmark of a Spring Arbor education, right? And a lot of small schools and Christian schools specifically. I mean, they're the academic part is excellent, but you're paying a premium. You're paying a little extra for the context in which you do that and the community that's developed that's part of that. And you're investing in that, and they want to know that that's still happening. A couple different things on that front. One is, orientation will be different. We are limiting the number of people that can be on campus, and we have a tradition that there's this, you have ivy cutting at the end. There's this ribbon kind of ceremony at the beginning that normally would have the whole new student body in a big circle on our campus quad with the parents surrounding them and all that stuff. Well, we can only have 100 people gathered outside at a time, according to our state right now. And so we're we're balancing, still having those events, um, and trying to find new ways to experience those traditions, and balancing that with something else that I think is critically important for our staff, and that is use this time to create new traditions, and don't have a commitment just to survive or just to tweak things that we did before to be now COVID friendly. This is an opportunity to improve, to change, to make something better where we didn't feel the freedom to change before, to make things better than they were, and to not constantly, there's a period of lament that is important for us as a staff. We felt like there was a time we needed to grieve the differences and lament how things were different. And at the same time, even as early as student leadership training that would be occurring in April and May, that we're now we did online, I wanted to make sure our staff didn't just spend the first 15 minutes saying, well, this is what we would have done, in our tradition, and it stinks because we can't do that. So just, enjoy or suck it up. But I was like, I don't want to hear that. Let's find new ways, new traditions, and just say, this is great. This is our opportunity to be together. This is how we're doing it in this world. And so we're trying to find that balance even as a staff right now for all of our events. Let's not gripe and try to, we have Arbor games. That's a huge deal. So it's one thing, don't just gripe about how we can't have Arbor games, right? But let's make an Arbor games that's COVID friendly, that's awesome, and just embrace it, and don't constantly reflect back on how different or terrible it is now, because it's not like it used to be. And I think that carries over into all sorts of areas of life, for us, where it's, what does it mean to embrace the context we're in, make the best of it, and not constantly refer back to the
Mm-hmm.
way it was, the way it was, the way it was.
I have to apologize. My earbuds are falling out. Apparently, I don't have the right ear size on. Like, that's not a subtle way to tell you adjust ears. It's, hey, these are about to fall out and make a
I know.
really.
Well, I couldn't tell. I can't. Yeah, it looked like it
I
was a little
I caught you.
wonky.
I caught you.
Yeah.
Um, I think about that too, and that's something we've been working with students on currently, is doing online trainings and prepping them for what it looks like to be in Lost and Found. I've been doing that the last 2 weeks, and doing our first ever online retreat, my first ever online
Yeah.
retreat, tomorrow and Saturday. So that's a party. So how,
Great.
and I think there's the thing that I'm encouraged by in all of this. It's not an encouraging time, and I don't want to say that COVID has been a positive, because it surely has not.
Right.
But it has opened us up to new new things. And I think
That's
those
right.
experiences and we've been stuck in a lot of things. You talk about traditions at your university. I'm thinking about um, ways we do things as an organization, but as people, and it opens us
Mm-hmm.
up to a whole different level of care to others, but also to
Right.
like new ideas. And so it's fun to hear you talk about that, because I
Yeah.
think for students coming in, they need to just know that things are going to be different, but that doesn't have to be bad. And I think
Right.
that's what that
Right.
mindset is that as we share that with people, it's like, this is going to be different, but is it bad? No. I mean, it might not be the same, and it could maybe be different or better in some ways, but this is different and better in
Yeah.
others. And I think that's really encouraging to hear that you're coming in with that viewpoint.
Yeah. One area that we've sensed that is, and I know a lot of schools don't have chapel, but we have a required chapel program. And, we spent a long time figuring out how do you get 600 people in one big room, and you can't. And so right away, we started trying to come up with different ideas. And to be honest, I think what we're going to be doing might even be better. It might even be something that sticks around after COVID is gone and it's not an issue for
Mm-hmm.
us, because the ability to get together in smaller groups. So necessity is the mother of invention, right? And I think we've invented some things that we might actually keep well after this time, because it's going to be better.
Yeah, I know it's not, I had a friend who said this, and then I said it, and I know he didn't come up with it, so I don't feel bad about it. But, they say don't waste a good crisis. And like,
Right.
it is that time. Like,
That's right.
there's when better to do
Yeah.
new things than when you have to.
Right. It's
um,
really sometimes the only time we do these things, right?
yes, I mean,
Yeah.
yes, very true. Um, so what would you say to, I mean, you've kind of touched on some of it here, but if you
Yeah.
had to tell, I mean, I know we're talking about your students specifically, but in general, we aren't at Spring Arbor
Yeah.
yet. We are,
Right.
but as we talk to students, you're familiar with the climate here, um, uh,
Yeah.
in South Dakota and the institutions here. You got to connect with those institutions. So we're at SDSU, USD, Dakota Wesleyan, Augie, and USF at this point, as well as looking
Yeah.
at expansion. That's neither here nor there. But as we
No, it's
think about
great
that,
though.
what are some what are some things that you would tell students at Spring Arbor, but also any student watching, what could they do to be prepared coming in? And then also
Mhm.
from your input, and this is my hot take, is that I think we're going to see an increase in mental health issues, or at least people seeking help for that, because this pandemic
Yeah.
has been so difficult. And you talked about trauma at the front of this. It's been a trauma, and I think we're going to see some
Mhm.
resurgence of that, and just like the feelings of fear and anxiety that come with being in that state of trauma still. And so, what would
Yeah.
you like say? What would advice would you give to students to be prepared for coming to that life, but then also handling that trauma in a healthy manner, and finding mental health support?
Yeah. I think one thing that we'll be communicating with our students quite a bit is this is a time when we're talking a lot about our physical health, right? So you've got every student every day, every faculty and staff member every day on our campus is going to have to go on their mobile phone, click on the health screening, and answer those 11 questions of, do you have a fever, do you have a cough, do you have a sore throat? And um, and for us, it's important for me to incorporate the mental health component of that as well, and not just physical health. So one big piece of advice is to pay as close attention to your mental health as you are to your physical health during this time. And it's real clear what the symptoms are that we're checking off. Like I mentioned, the fever, headaches, all that kind of stuff. um, so we're trying to incorporate what are some other mental health symptoms that we would want our students to watch out for. Do they feel like sleeping more? Do they feel like their appetite is gone? Are they and just incorporating some of those questions. So again, in this era where everybody's asking you every time you go to the dentist or whatever, they're asking you, have you had a fever? Have you traveled? Pay as close attention to the mental health and the emotional well-being, as you are your physical health right now. Um,
And this is the first time hearing about this, like, this health screening thing. I think that's really cool. But
Yeah.
also, do you think that could have some adverse effects because you're always sometimes I'm discovering I'm a little bit of a hypochondriac, just a little bit. I'm
Right.
like, especially in this moment, I went out to the
Well,
mailbox at the post office. I came back and I'm like, I think I've I think I've got a cough now, and my wife's like, no, you don't, you're fine. So it's like
right.
looking at those symptoms, and that do you see
Right.
potentially some adverse
Oh,
effects or
sure.
a potential increase in mental health stressors?
Uh, Definitely. I mean, that is a huge consideration, as we go into this. But I think anytime you are, I mean, what's the harm? We balance that, right? But I mean, ultimately, what's the harm with um, being a little concerned? Like I am actually working from home today because I had a little bit of a cough that I think is related to allergies. Um, from I've been outside a lot more in the last couple of days, but I don't know that for sure, and I don't want anybody else to stress about me being around. And so, like, whether where I am on the spectrum of hypochondria, it's at least caring for others well in the midst of this.
Yeah.
And so, since we have the capacity to work from home, and more than ever, and we've got all the classes happening other ways, I guess to me, I'd rather err on the side of caution out of care and compassion for those in our community and those around us. So I'm trying to get to our homepage here so that you can see, we've got our health screening right there.
Corey, is that the Ooh La La app? Because it looks
Oh, we
very
do.
familiar.
They use the same. Very good.
I lived in that for a little while, and I'm like, this looks remarkably familiar.
It is true. Um, but I would say so. This says, in the last 24 hours, have you experienced any of the following symptoms listed that you do not normally experience? So hopefully
Mm-hmm.
we're taking out a lot of the things. Well, somebody saying I woke up with a cough, and they're like, "Was that new?" No, I wake up every day with a cough for 30 minutes. It's like, well, okay, then
This is
you
normal.
know
Yeah.
this is normal and it's okay. But yeah, I mean, for those reasons, though, I think everybody's on edge. I mean, and
Mm-hmm.
students are all over the spectrum. Some couldn't care less about this, and some are terrified about it. And their families are in the same boat. And so we're asking our community, be very kind and gracious with one another. And that's, we have a pretty low threshold for those who, normally you would require an ADA, medical documentation that says I'm vulnerable and should be able to take courses remotely. Well, we're going to allow students that just indicate that they're fearful and very anxious about this, and that anxiety is creating, even if they don't have the documentation, if it's strong enough that they need to take classes remotely and they'd be better off, or if they perceive that they'd be better off, we're willing to give that a whirl and to try it and support them in that. So
Yeah. And as you mentioned with I mean, that's just awesome that you're having that level of care and just trusting
yeah.
their concerns, that you're trusting their input on this stuff, and you're saying like, this is how you feel. Okay, you don't have to do anything to prove it to me. I think that's really awesome.
Right.
Uh, but within that, um, maybe not even within that, but um, because of that, because I know being at at the small institution, that communal aspect is just so incredibly important.
Right.
And we work with, I mean, as I mentioned, out of our universities that we work with, three of them are small
Mm-hmm.
Christian liberal arts institutions. The other two are mid-level state schools, which is a whole different thing, and there's their own
Yeah.
communities in there. But when that's such a significant part of, like you said, the experience of a small institution,
Yeah.
how I mean, how do you focus on building that within your team, but not even just your team, but like with students? Like, how do you still encourage them to like look out for one another, go out and do stuff,
Right.
spend time with each other, and build a community?
Yeah, that I'm not gonna lie. There's no easy answer there, and it is going to be really difficult to balance that. And we know that students, part of the reason why we're so committed to being open and face to face on ground instruction is because it's what the students want, and we believe it's what they need. That's how or we feel like that is the better way to be educated and to be developed is to be together and to do it in community and to have the support around you that you need. And we know that students succeed at better rates when they live on campus and that kind of thing. And so it is a balancing act where, we know that to be true, although none of that research existed in a pandemic. It's all research that's kind of in normal circumstances. And so maybe a student is better off who is, if they're petrified, if they're terrorized by this fear, then maybe they are better off at home and to keep going, to have some semblance of normalcy in their educational goals, to stay on track, but to do it in an environment where they feel safer. Maybe in this time frame, that is the better approach. And so we're willing to see what that looks like for this semester and to help students. And then to, our events, we are going to, by necessity, be shifting our programming model from these massive big events to a lot smaller, more relational components. And so those can occur in mixed groups. And in some ways, we've become better experts at having these Zoom conversations and FaceTime meetings and things like that. And so we're hoping that our peer advisors that we have and our resident assistants will be reaching out if some of their floor mates that would have been there but are at home right now, that they'll include them in the conversations they're having and in the any event that they're doing to the best that they can, and find ways to bring people in.
That's awesome. And you mentioned, I just caught this, you said for the semester. Are you just planning kind of a semester ahead and then seeing what get into the fall semester, what the spring semester looks like?
Yeah, I mean it
makes sense.
Well, what's funny is our kids in the school system that they're in, they're also doing that, where they're just doing 4-week chunks at a time. So our kids have to say, I'm going to do online or on ground and commit to that for the next 4 weeks. And then they can flip flop if they want or need to, but then they commit to that for the next 4 weeks. And I think that's just an indication of, for all of us, is annual planning is kind of out the window right now. Like, we have no idea what's going to happen with this in flu season. Some schools are kind of front loading everything and starting a little bit earlier and ending at Thanksgiving. There's wisdom in that. Yeah, there is wisdom in that. But the fact of the matter is we have no idea what's going to happen. And so we don't feel like we can, with any sense of, integrity behind it, say this is what we're doing for February through May. So we're just going to see where it goes and make decisions and try to communicate timelines for folks so that there's some peace and reduce anxiety in the midst of that. By November, we'll do this X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, that's I bet for you specifically, not having an annual plan is maybe not the favorite thing.
Oh my gosh, you know me. I do like my calendars and my schedules and here's what we do when, and this kind of throws everything out the window. But it's part of what it means to meet our staff needs and our student needs. Because as important to me as meeting our student needs in this is, what can our staff handle? What can our team manage? And how can we make sure that they're, in an airplane, putting on their air first and taking care of themselves before they're trying to take care of others.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's I don't know, for students I think that might be a good thing or a bad thing that they don't know what the next semester looks like, but it shows, to me it's a good thing. It shows intention that you're willing to be fluid with the situation and hear their concerns. But at the same time, for those planners among us, I'm not one of them.
I know.
Those planners among us, that's probably a whole nother layer of that unknown piece that makes it hard.
It is, and that's where I would say to students, it's a good point that every student is different. There are some very futuristic strengths and some that couldn't care less. And so just know who you are in the midst of that. And if you need some answers, it's okay to make some decisions based on what you know at this moment. And might something change? Yeah. But if for your own health and wellness, you need to make decisions now, then we as an institution are doing that too. Like there's some. I was talking with my brother last night, and he works with lights and sound and stuff for even sports events, NBC and colleges and things like that. And he said some places are saying we've even already canceled 2021 events, and And that may be overkill, but for them and their organization, that might make sense because there's so much planning that goes on, and it's just easier to say we're just not going to do it. And might that so some people need to do the same thing that institutions are doing and say, you know what, I'm making decisions because I need to. Might something change in between, and might I miss out on something? Yeah, but my overall health needs me to have clarity and a vision moving forward with what I do know, and so I'm going to do that.
Yeah, that's crazy. Bless your brother's heart, because a lot of stuff's
Yeah,
going. That's a hard
it's
job,
been tough.
anyways. And
It is, yeah. When you rely on other people having events that you support, it's a pretty tough time for him.
yeah, that's crazy. Well, we are getting kind of close to when we at the end of our time
Oh,
here together. So as we dig into this a little bit, I know it's like we touched on a lot of topics, maybe none of them in significant depth, but the things that I heard that I'm excited for is that you are a representative of the institution of higher ed, and seeing that level of um, care and concern that's coming from you, that gives me a ton of hope that that's happening at, I believed it was anyways, but I definitely
right.
believe now that it's probably
Sure.
happening at all the institutions where students are coming into that space in the fall here. So I'm excited
Yeah.
about that. But like I said, that gives me hope. But are there any things that as you look ahead here that give you a lot of hope, that make you like really like that you're really actually looking forward to for this coming year?
Yeah, I think anytime there's challenge and to I have seen, I saw it in March when all these decisions were made that there were students when I was leaving my office one night at 7 after a long day of meetings of trying to decide what to do. There was a group of maybe 15 students huddled around, like praying and crying and, upset about their senior year being, thwarted. But they stopped me and prayed for me in that moment because they knew that whatever they were doing, whatever they were feeling, that they understood that we would have been under a lot of pressure to trying to do the right thing for our students. And so for them to have stopped me and prayed for me, so we were all sobbing, by the time that this is going on, and just their care and compassion for an administrator in the midst of this went a long way. And so I would say that's one of those where I'm hopeful is that I see, um, for the most part, our parents and our students have been very kind and gracious. They want what's best for their kids, but they've been largely encouraging and supportive, and that just means a ton. I got a thank you card in the mail the other day saying, "I'm sure you've heard a lot of negative things, and you're getting a lot of negative pushback. Here's one family that cares about you and is praying for you and the decisions that you're making." So this we have an opportunity, to be those families for people like me. So, in the midst of our own anxiety and angst and things like that, to find ways to be encouraging and supportive of one another is critical. And so to be one of those friends to somebody else, to be the kind word and the encourager, is really critical, because then that just comes back on you, and then you start to feel um, less anxiety and concerned about things, as you know that you're sending your love and care to others in the midst of that. And so I've seen that. I'm very hopeful for whatever comes of this, and that our students will rally around it, and they'll be supportive, and they'll understand that this is just a unique time. And um, it's always interesting to have those crises moments, and to the strength that comes out of that. And so to focus on that, I think, will be really helpful. And and just the reminder that we need each other. I have a feeling I have a neighbor who doesn't know that I'm on a webinar right now. And the neighbor is another vice president here at the institution, so he's being a turkey. Um, uh, but
Oh, that was the
the
best. That was the best.
that's right,
The
best way to
highlight.
end. So yeah,
Oh shucks. Corey, just one last thing I wanted to ask you here, quick. Man, I
yeah.
just that's getting me. That's too funny. I love it so much. Um, what if you had to give? There's no, I mean, there's no like one size fits all thing for, um, what we're going through in the world here, obviously. But I say it often because it's part of my daily language. Is like we can all learn to be more resilient. It's a skill. It's not something
Mm.
you're born with. So, what's maybe one thing you would give advice to anyone in coming into this new season here this fall? Students, faculty, staff, or anyone, of course. But we're focused in on that population that you're most connected to. What would be maybe one thing you would say to them to just help them start thinking about ways that they can be developing their own internal sense of resilience?
Yeah. I think the the idea, and I'm sure you've talked about this before with folks, but the whole idea of fixed versus growth mindsets and realities. I would say if we realize that what we've heard our whole lives is that you're supposed to find your passion and pursue it. If we realize that it's not about finding, it's about developing your passion. Um, because when you think about finding something, then there's the opportunity to lose it, or when time gets tough, the temptation is to drop it. And that I thought it was a passion of mine, but because it's difficult now, it's no longer. It must not have been the passion, and I just need to drop it. And we do that with things, we do it with people, we do it in our relationships. Um, and that just because there's challenge ahead does not mean that that's not an area of passion or an area of interest or an area that we need to work in. And so, it's okay to not exactly know what's next, to not exactly know what you want to do in life. As a college student, the point is to explore and to find people that you want to be around and then be around them and learn about more about what they do. And that will help continually show you more about who you are and who God created you to be. And so I just think it's important now more than ever to commit to not just giving up on something when it becomes a challenge, and not to assume that means it's not what I'm supposed to be doing. But to say maybe this is an opportunity that I'm supposed to grow even more in this area, and how can I develop more of that interest and passion? So don't lose your curiosity in the midst of this. Don't make sure you're still advocating for yourself and asking questions for what you need, and but just don't assume every challenge is a roadblock that just ends your journey wherever you find yourself.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Corey. And thank you for your time here today. And for anyone watching now or later, like I said earlier in the front end, feel free to reach out to us if you want to connect with Corey more. We can get you connected. But also, if you're just looking for a community of support, where our tagline is "We are here," and we don't just that's a decision we made, not because we felt like that
Yeah.
was core to who we are, and we truly are actively involved in the lives of those that we serve, and so we want to be there, and we are here for that support. So if you've got questions, you need some support, you need just someone to maybe connect with, reach out to us on our social media at Resilient Today. And that's also our website. You just add a www at the front and a .org on the back end, and you'll get to our website. But we may not, and I just need to say too, we may not be the be all end all. We don't pretend to be. So maybe we are able to help you, but even if we're not able to assist in that moment, we are able to find you the right resources, especially within this area. We have connections to a lot of places, and we can get you the help and support you need. And so, if you're in crisis, the things that I'd say is don't hesitate to reach out, even if you're not in crisis and you're feeling like life's hard, because let's face it, it is. Build that community, as Corey was talking about, but also have some self knowledge about what's normal for you, and be aware of what's something you that is out of the ordinary, and then seek help, because at the end of the day, no one accomplishes anything on their own, and we no matter what we say, you've been developed by someone or supported by someone. So be willing to reach out and don't have to carry these burdens by yourself. So um, the rest of this month here, we're going to be talking about well-being and self-care. So we'll have a couple others coming up here to give you some tools for that and talk about resiliency within the realm of well-being and wellness here too. So I'm excited for the rest of the month, and I'm just so happy I got to spend some time with you today, Corey.
Oh, the pleasure has been all mine. Truly, it's been good to be with you.
Yeah. Anything last thing you want to say before we
Oh,
kick ourselves off here, Corey?
I've talked enough. I've talked enough. It's only that I love Lost and Found. I love what you're doing, and I am hopeful that our students are really using you guys as a great resource. So
Awesome. Well,
thanks
thanks
for
for
what you're
that.
doing.
Oh, thank you for what you're doing too, Corey. And we'll be back next Thursday. So see you here on Facebook Live. Bye, everyone.